especially because if you understand feudalism, particularly early feudalism, it didn't have powerful states. One of Lenin's greatest books is called The Economic History of Russia, and he goes back centuries. It's a huge book, 3 or 4 years thick. I don't know if people have read it. He's very good about the absence of a strong central government in many parts of Europe, including inside Russia, but also in other parts of Europe. The development of a powerful central state comes towards the end of feudalism as it is desperate to hold on, which ought to be suggested that maybe we turn to powerful government here in the United States, Europe, maybe also this system is exhausted. Can't go on, has to marshal every last bit of power it can, not to be lost.
It would be interesting to see what the Soviet Union would look like if Lenin never died.
Right. A lot of people have asked that question over the years. A lot of people.
Here is Stalin sliding in the middle of the night, erasing the withering away of the State Park.
Yes, exactly.
So just to return briefly back to AOC and Bernie Sanders, what are your thoughts about these modern political figures that represent these ideas, and they sometimes refer to those ideas as democratic socialism?
Right. The crucial thing about Bernie and about AOC, and this is particularly true about Bernie, because AOC is much younger than the older man. Bernie, being roughly right, has been around formatively as a student, an activist, then coming up through the ranks in Burlington, Vermont as a mayor. He lived through what, for lack of a better term, I would call Cold War America. And the taboo in Cold War America, running from around 1945-6 to the present, was a Manichaean worldview. The United States is good, it defines democracy, and the Soviet Union is awful, defines whatever the opposite of democracy should be called. Good here, evil there. It was taken so far that even among the ranks of academic individuals, it was impossible to have a conversation. I mean, I can't tell you, just make it very personal. The number of times I would raise my hand in my classes at Harvard or Stanford or Yale, and I would ask a question that had something to do with Marxism, because I was studying it on my own. There were no courses to teach me, except by people who fresh. And I didn't so I would ask the question, and I would see in the faces of my teachers, both those I didn't much care for and those who were good teachers that I liked, fear. It's just fear. They didn't want to go there. They didn't want to answer my question. And after a while, I got to know some of them, and I found out why. Because you don't know how the rest of the class is going to understand this. Either they would have to say, I don't know, which would be the honest truth for many of them, but if the professor doesn't want to say, and the class would like to know, or they'd have to, if they knew, they'd have to say something that indicated they didn't know really much, and they weren't going to do that. Or they would know something. And maybe that would be because they were interested. They did not want the rest of the students to begin to say, Professor Smith, he's interested in. It's not good for your career. You don't know how this is going to play out. Who's going to say what to whom? And I could see in their faces what I later learned, because they told me, don't come to my office hours. We're in the office. We can talk about it. But I'm not. That's how bad it was.
Is it not still?
Pretty much. In my field, the great so-called debate, I find it boring, but the great debate for my colleagues is between what's called neoclassical economics and Keynesian economics. Neoclassical, the government should stay out of the economy, or laissez-faire, or liberalism. And the Keynesian saying, no, you crazy neoclassical. If you do that, you'll have Great Depression, and the system will collapse. You need the government to come in to solve the problems, to fix the weaknesses. And they hate each other, and they throw each other out of their jobs. One of the very few things they can do together that they agree on is keeping people like me out. That they can find common ground to do. So I had to learn it all on myself. Why am I telling you this? Because this taboo means that all of the complicated developments within Marxism and within socialism of the post-World War II period, the vast bulk of all of that is unknown. Not just to the average American person, but to the average American academic, to the average American who thinks of himself or herself as an intellectual. I mean, I have had to spend ridiculous amounts of my time explaining Soviet history. I have no idea. Or saying, there's this man Lukács, Hungarian Marxist. He really had interesting. Or to explain that Gramsci was not a great literary critic. He was head of the Communist Party of Italy for most of his life. What does that mean? What you like Gramsci as a literary critic, but they don't even know. It's been erased. A little bit like stories I've heard about Trotsky and his kind of erased in the Soviet Union because he obviously fell out of favor, and so somehow all of his writing, many of which are very interesting and complicated. Anyway, so what you're going to have in this country is a slow awakening of socialism. From a long hibernation called what? I never expected, to be very honest with you, that I would live to see. I do come because these things always do, but I didn't expect to see it. So I have been surprised, as have a lot of us, that when it starts to happen, it happens fast.
So you see Bernie as an early sign of the awakening.
Absolutely.
From the Cold War to accept the idea.
Bernie was always, we all knew, and everybody he did not. But 2016, he makes a decision momentous to run for president. He's just a senator from Vermont. Vermont is one of the smallest states in the Union. People who live in Vermont love to tell you that there are more cows than people in Vermont, etc. So here from this little state, this elderly gentleman with a New York City accent runs for office and says, I'm a socialist. And when they attack him, he doesn't run away. I'm a socialist. No, he had it wasn't a secret that suddenly got out. But the great question, and I don't mind telling you because I went to the right schools, I know a lot of people, Janet Yellen was my classmate, and stuff like that. So I was speaking with a high official of the Democratic Party, and I said, well, what do you think about Bernie entering the race? Makes no difference if they get 1% of the vote. Right? He was wrong. They had no idea what was coming. But the truth is, it wasn't just that he didn't. I thought his 1% was probably right. So we were both.
Yeah, change can happen fast. AOC.
Yeah. Possible. But two things. Number one, it's fast. Number two, it's going to go in the following direction, I would guess. You begin with the most moderate, calm, non-confrontational socialism you can imagine.
So not AOC.
No, they are not confrontational in my judgment.
In terms of the ideas of socialism. I mean, they're both very feisty.
They're feisty personally,
but not
ideological.
Got it.
You know, she is. Bernie is also. In honest moments, and they're both really are honest, at least in my opinion.
What?
In honest moments, Bernie will tell you that what he advocates is democratic socialism is pretty much what FDR was in the 1930s. It was a kind of popular government, taxed the rich a lot more than you do now to provide a lot more support for the working class than you do now. That's not a fundamental change. That's what he means by socialism. When he talks about it and is asked for examples, he mentions Denmark a lot. Okay, that's consistent. That's the softest kind of socialism. And that's where we're going to start in a country coming out of hibernation. Pretty soon, it's already happening. There'll be people who need and want to go further in the direction of socialism than Bernie and AOC are comfortable with. You can already see the shoots of it now. You know, AOC voted together with most of the others to support the money for Ukraine. Okay, that a lot of people in the social movement do not support that. And that's going to happen. I don't know exactly how that's going to work out, but that should give people an idea. There are disagreements, and they're going to fester, and they're going to grow.
People in the socialist sphere don't support money in the United States in a large amount than it is sent to Ukraine. Is it because of it's fundamentally the military-industrial complex of capitalism?
No. I mean, there are some people that then there are people who guns and butter, and why are we over there when we have such needs at home like this? And then there are people who, well, go back to what we talked about at the beginning, who are more like Lenin and Debs. This is a fight between.
What? How did you die to them, you fucking idiots? Ooh. Oh my god. His health isn't moving at all. So annoying.
Western capitalism, Russian oligarchs and wannabe oligarchs in Ukraine. What are we doing? We have to insist that these forces sit down at the bargaining table and negotiate a settlement and don't kill large numbers of Ukrainians. Everybody's going to fight for the last Ukrainians. It's a little strange. What are you doing? You're supposed to be in favor of peace. And for the United States, invading and occupying Afghanistan and Iraq to be against another country invading. Seriously, this is crazy. I invade is good, and you invade is terrible. What? You know, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What's going on here? All of these questions are being acted, by the way, not just by socialists. Lots of other people do, inside the Democratic Party and also inside the Republican Party. You watch that Tucker Carlson and people like that, they are against.
If you did any heals at all, or were even really here,
there, of the weapons that's there. They don't like it.
Fuck!
Policy and Trump wobble. Mr. Biden's policy has got all kinds of critics from the left and right. And every day that this thing lasts, it's criticism. Anyway, the point is that AOC and Bernie should be, I think, evaluated as the early shoots after a long winter for isolation from the whole. When I explain to people the contribution made, for example, to modern Marxism, I'll give you an example, by the French philosopher Louis Althusser, I don't know if the name means anything. Okay. He was the rector of the École Normale Supérieure in Paris. That's the equivalent. Imagine in this country if there were a university that combined Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and MIT. It would be the university. Well, the École Normale in France, in Paris, is the. He was a tenured professor who became the rector. The rector is like the president of the university. An active member of the French Communist Party. That was possible in France during the Cold War. That was ridiculous in this country. Could not in a million years, right? So, Althusser as a philosopher tried to bring a version of postmodernism into Marxism with enormous impact all over the world where he traveled, not just in Europe, right? So if you want to look him up, spell it out for you. Althusser. Louis. The Louis is the Louis. Althusser. Look him up. By the way, MIT president is a major public certified of his works in England. By the way, the textbook I wrote in economics, in case you ever read, was also published by the MIT president. Contending economic theories, neoclassical, Keynesian, and Marxian. That's an MIT
Marx. And by the way, what do you think? I don't know. Distinction Marxian economics and Marxist. Marxism is the umbrella of everything that's.
I only use it because Marxist, I use as a noun, a person is a Marxian, I use as an adjective. I don't mean something great different. There's a last point I would like to make about that's also legitimate. I'm a historian too, and I know that the transition out of feudalism in Europe to capitalism was a transition that took centuries and that occurred in fits and starts. For example, a feudal manor would start to disintegrate. Serfs would run away. They'd run into a town. How would they live in the town? They had no land anymore because they had run away from the manor. A deal was struck without the people involved in the deal understanding what they were doing. A merchant would say to one of these serfs, I'm in the business of buying and then reselling stuff and living off the difference. But you know, I could make more money if I produce some of this stuff myself rather than buy it from somebody else. So I'm gonna make you a deal. I'm gonna give you money once a week. I'll give you money, what we would later call a wage. And you come here and under my supervision, you make this crap that I'm gonna then sell, and this all works out. In other words, there were efforts, unconscious, not self-aware, to go out of feudalism to a new system. Some of them lasted a few days and then fell apart. Some of them lasted weeks or months or years. But it took a long time before the conditions were ready for a kind of a general switch. And once that was done, it grew on itself and became the global capitalist system we have today. That's the only model we have. So for me, that's what I see when I look at socialism. I see the Paris Commune was an event, an attempt. It lasted a few weeks. I see Russia. That was an attempt that lasted 70 years. Then I see, fill in the blank, I see these are all early experiments. These are all, you learn things to do, learn things never to do again. The good, the bad. What do you build on? How do you learn? And that's what the socialist and Marxist tradition, when it's serious, that's what it does.
So in your ideas, so capitalism was a significant improvement over the feudalism. And we are coming to an age of slavery, and we're coming to an age where capitalism will die out and make it. It's not that capitalism is somehow fundamentally broken. It's better than the things that came before it, but there's going to be things yet better, and they will be grounded in the ideas of Marxism and socialism. Is there just to linger briefly on the way Marxism is used as a term on Twitter? There's something called, I'm sorry if I'm using this correctly, cultural Marxism. Criticism of universities being infiltrated by Marxists. I'm not exactly sure. I don't pay enough attention. But it's woke. There's a kind of woke ideology. I'm not exactly sure what is the fundamental text. Who's the Karl Marx for wokeness? All I do know is that there's sort of characteristics of woke ideologies. Hard lines drawn between good guys and bad guys. And basically everyone is a bad guy except people who are very loud, non-stop. And that applies for racism, for sexism, for gender politics, Is there any parallel between Marxian economics and Marxist ideology, and whatever that is called Marxism?
Mostly Marxist. One of the consequences of the taboo is that Marxism, like socialism and communism, become swear words. It's like calling somebody, well, I won't use bad language, but using a four-letter word to describe somebody. So instead of calling them this or that, you call them a Marx. In many circles, this is even worse than whatever other adjective. But it doesn't have a meaning. Closest you get is your little list. It is somebody who is concerned about race and sex, sexual gender, all of those things, and wants their transgender bathroom, and I don't like any of these people, so I slap the word Marxism or the phrase cultural Marxism, because it isn't Marxism about getting more money or controlling the industry or all those things that didn't really know Marxists somehow are concerned about. So this is odd. Much about always been interested in culture. I mean, Lukács, the man I met before Gramsci, that's what they're famous for. The analysis of what Marxism particularly has to say about culture. Gramsci writes a great letter about the Catholic Church, about theater and painting in Italy, and on and on. This is just ignorance. They don't like it. It's a label that summarizes kind of a shorthand. I'm against it. I don't want to be told there's ugly race, or sex, or phobia against gay, or whatever it is. Mark or socialism. It's like socialism. It is a mentality, but I don't blame them. I mean, it's childish, it's mean-spirited, but it comes out of the fact no one ever sat them down and said to you, here's this tradition, it's got these kinds of things under here, and these make differences. Look, an intelligent society, which this country is, could have and should have done that. It was here. Terror that made them behave in the way they did, and we're now seeing. Having said that, there is such a thing as cultural Marxism. What that is simply those Marxists who devoted themselves to analyzing how it is that a particular culture is on the one hand shaped like capitalism, and on the other hand becomes a condition for capitalism to survive. In other words, how do we analyze the interaction between the class struggle on the job, and attitude towards sexuality, or whatever else. And there are Georg Lukács, greatest Antonio. And a modern man just died a couple years ago, a great intellectual named Stuart Hall, H-A-L-L. If you want, if I were teaching a course in cultural Marxism, those would be three major blocks on the syllabus. I would give you articles and books to read of their stuff because it has been so seminal in provoking many others.
So there is something to be said and understood about the kind of culture that capitalism creates, and the kind of culture that enables capitalism.
And Marxists are particularly those who like to look at that interaction. In other words, they're interested in how capitalism is culture and how culture is shaped. There's another name. Stuart Hall was British, Gramsci is Italian, Lukács is Hungarian, the German is Walter Benjamin, Benjamin. He was a member of the Frankfurt School, which is a huge school of Marxism developed in Germany, and that had a lot of people, many of them were It was a bit of a reaction against the narrow
Fuck, man, please heal.
politics. There were people who said you're leaving out very important parts of our society that are shaping the economy as much as they are shaped by it. And it was that impetus to open Marxism, to be more inclusive in what it means to be important to understand that this cult, and they call themselves cultural Marxists, but they had a completely different meaning from this. This is just, just bad mouthing, that's all.
Let me ask you a more personal question. So, for most players spend a large, many decades in the United States. This consequence for being a Marxist. Have you had dark periods in your own life where you've gone to dark places in your mind where it was difficult, like self-doubt, difficult to know like what the hell am I doing? When you're surrounded by colleagues and people, you said prestigious universities, both personal interest and career, but also as a human being, whenever you know, kind of looks funny because you're studying this thing. Did that ever get real low?
No. I don't feel that people had exactly what you were saying in your question. How were you? I'd be asking you that question too.
And what's wrong with
No, nothing wrong with the question. And here's the honest truth. I don't know how anomalous I am. I really don't. But the truth is, no. I have. If my wife was sitting here, she'd tell you.
You did. Look, like, why is my mic on? Why is my mic on right now? Jesus fucking Christ, man.
which he tells me, which is I have been tremendously lucky in my life, which is true. But then again, luck never is the only explanation for things. That's part of it. What can I say? I didn't choose the time of my birth. I didn't choose the communities in which I grew up or the schools I attended or anything else.
No, but the fact that there was no courses or extensive courses on Marxian economics.
But you know, again, I'm Hegel. On the one hand, I was denied good instruction. On the other hand, I had to go out and learn it on my own. And the motivation when you do that is very different. I'm not the student who sits there with my notebook taking notes of what the great professor says and reading the text and getting ready for the exam. I don't have an exam. I'm doing something slightly risque, kind of romantically different and oppositional. I was able to find always one or two professors that I could talk to outside of the classroom. Other students who felt enough similar to me that we could get together and read these books and talk about them. I had a number of really fortuitous people who were kind to me and gave me of their time and their effort to teach me along the way. And I've had the benefit that because I went to all these fancy schools, I do know a lot of people who are in high places in this culture, And when I have been put in difficult positions, I often wave my pedigree, and it works like garlic with the devil. Back away. Get back away. Because Americans are very deferential to that kind of academic prestige.
But there's a personal psychological thing that seems that you have never been shaken by this. You have just naturally somebody who just has perseverance.
Well, I would put it, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I would put it a little different. I think capitalism struck me early on in my life as not that great a system. And nothing has happened to change my mind. In other words, the development just kept giving me more and more evidence that this, and I must say over the last 10 years, what's really changed, the last 10 years, I mean, I can't describe to you how big that change is. And that may be more important than anything else we've discussed. Up until 10 years ago, I would do a public event, an interview on television, radio thing. I'd give a talk at some conference or something. Once every 2 or 3 months, I'd be invited and I could do it, like academics often do. I now do 2 to 3 to 4 interviews every day. So,
There's a hunger.
how is there hunger?
It's fascinating.
And and I want to be honest with you. As I say at the end of some of my talks, I allow there to be a kind of a pregnant pause from the podium, that I lean into the microphone and let's say, with as much smile as I can get, I'm having fun. And that's the truth. I never expected, look, I'm used to teaching a classroom, a seminar for graduate students with 8 or 9 or 10 students, or a regular undergraduate class with 30, or an occasional introductory course with a few hundred. I've done all of those things many times. But an audience, that I can count in the hundreds of thousands on YouTube and all of that, no, that's new. That's new.
Is there advice you can give, given your bold and non-standard career in life, advice you can give to high school students, college students about how to have a career like that, or maybe how to have a career or a life they can be proud of?
Yeah. First of all, my advice is go for it. The conditions for doing that now are infinitely better than they were when I had to do it. And I could do it, and I'm happy I did it. Becoming a teacher is one of those decisions I made that I've never regretted. And I've never regretted being a critic of this society. Never. I find it edifying. The gratitude people express to me for helping them see kind of what's going on is unbelievably encouraging. What can I tell you?
So that fills you with joy. Pointing out that the emperor has no clothes fills you. That's a life,
And
not just
why?
important. Is it
It's
joyful?
because most of the people who say something like that to
Yeah.
me are people who, if they had the vocabulary, and some of them do, would say, you know, I thought I was seeing through that outfit that Emperor was wearing.
Yeah.
I thought it, and they did.
Yeah.
And all they needed was a little extra, this information or that factoid or this logic. Ah, yeah. And they have that. And I remember having that too. When I had a teacher who made something clear that had been murky, I always felt gratitude. And now I get that gratitude a good bit. And yes, it is enormously gratifying. And I'm not sure I could get it any other way. And I have learned, and I'm walking proof, that being a critic of society and doing it systematically and sharing it with other people makes for a very good life. A very good life.
Speaking of which, however, one other aspect of human nature is that life comes to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think about your death? Are you afraid of it?
Afraid of it? No. Think about it? Yes. Yes. I'm not afraid. I've always thought, death is hard for the people that are left when you're dead. It's not going to bother you very much. So I worry more about my wife. I'm very attached to my wife. I mentioned to you I got married when I was 23 years old. That's my wife to this day. So I'm lucky because that's. If you get married to anybody at age 23, it's either luck or it isn't.
What role has love played in your life?
Because I came from a family, if your family is political refugees, which mine was, who had to interrupt their lives, move to another continent, learn another language, find another life, income and job, the disruption goes real deep for any refugee. So my mother and father were both refugees. They met as refugees. So I had to, in a way, make it up to them. I was the first child of their, I have a younger sister, but I was the first child. And, there's a lot of psychological pressure on you if you're in that situation. Nobody means you harm, but you've got to do what was shut off to them in a way they want you to do. It's the closest they're going to get to what they had hoped. And my parents were both university students. My father was a lawyer. My mother had to leave the university to run for her life. So I had to perform. I went to high school here in the United States. I had to get all A's. I had to be on the football team. I had to play the violin, the orchestra. I had to do all these because everything had to be achieved. So I'm an achievement crazy person that way. But that's functional in this dysfunctional society.
But on top of that, that's an achievement within the game of this particular society. But then love seems to be a thing that's greater than that game. Is that something that made you a better person?
Oh God! Yeah.
How is it? How has it made you a better Marxian and a better
everything? Because my wife by profession is a psychotherapist.
Excellent. I love it.
And I needed it.
Yeah.
And so I married it. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I think as I look back on it, that was more than a little what was going on. And she has tutored me all my life about a whole range of aspects of life that my family never talked about, never dealt with, never, at least explicitly engaged in any of that.
Because it was all about survival. The immigrant challenge is survival.
Survive. And you're so busy that you tell yourself you can't do that. Of course you can. And there are other reasons why you're not going to look at those problems. But the survival is so urgent that you can fool yourself this way. And my parents did that.
One last question. What's the meaning of life, Richard Wolff? Why
I
are
will
we here?
quote you, Mr. Marx.
Let's go.
Life is struggle. And for me, I have found that to be true, that the struggle, whether it is to build a relationship with your child, I have 2 children, whether it's to build one with your spouse, whether it's to understand a complicated argument and simplify it so that you can share the pleasure of understanding this relationship to a student or to an audience. It's a struggle to do all those things. But that network of struggles, that makes life interesting, intriguing, and satisfying.
And meaningful.
Very meaningful.
And that latter thing, I gotta say, you do masterfully. You're one of the great communicators and educators out there today, and it's a huge honor that you will sit with me for so many hours.
Thank you.
This is awesome. Thanks for listening to this conversation with Rich and Wolf. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, let me leave you with some words from Karl Marx. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you next time. Blink once if you know when Elder Scrolls 6 is coming out, but are not going to tell me. Following a conversation with Todd Howard, one of the greatest video game designers of all time. He has led the development of the Fallout series and the Elder Scrolls series, including Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and the future Elder Scrolls 6, and a totally new world in an upcoming game called Starfield. Many of these have won Game of the Year awards and have been some of the most celebrated and impactful games ever made. To me, Skyrim is quite possibly the greatest game ever. This is the Lex Friedman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Todd Howard. Is it possible that we are currently living inside a video game that the future you designed? Can you give hints as to how one would escape if this was a video game? How can a video game character escape to outside the video game? Are these things you don't consider when you design the game?
Actually, we do. Because in the kind of games that we make, we want it to be as open as possible. So, when you start a game, you're always testing it. What can I do? What would the game allow me to do? And you check everything. You try to pick up the mugs. You try every door. You collide with everything. Like, hey, what are the rules of this world? We try to do games where, we say yes as much as possible. That leads to some level of chaos. But if you were stuck in a video game, you would try everything, and usually you're gonna find a door or a space where the designers didn't anticipate you piling all those crates up and getting over a wall that they didn't expect.
Right, so it's not a designed doorway out. It's a accidental, unintended doorway out, and it's a happy bug.
You could like Truman Show, just get in the ocean and go till it's
Just keep going,
right,
keep going, right. But the more realistic the game becomes, the harder it is to find that door. The bigger the world, the bigger the world.
And then as we do it, we learn they're gonna find it. So just don't try to pen them in. Usually we leave like this developer test cell area in the game that we don't anticipate anyone will find, and they ultimately find it. It usually has crates of all the weapons in the game and things like that.
The little hints you drop now will just drive people mad. It's something I enjoy deeply. So Skyrim NPCs have at times hilarious dialogue. What does it take to build a good NPC dialogue?
The main thing is to make them reactive. A lot of times when you write characters for movies or things like that, you want to make that character interesting for themselves, right? What's their story? And there's some characters like that the player definitely cares about. But the best characters are the ones that react to you. So you'll find a lot of people love our guards, and the guards are written almost purely to be reactive. Hey, nice tie, I like your jacket, dude, this is a cool watch, you know, hey, what'd you do? And so that, hey, you're the man as you walk by, that makes them interesting, or the way they react to something that you do. Lydia in Skyrim, who everybody loves, I'm sworn to carry your burdens, that's a generic line that all of the, you know, housecarls have, and it just kind of lands when she says it.
Why does it land? And did you anticipate it would land?
There's a slight snarkiness in that particular read of it, and you're asking her to do something, and she's reacting to you.
What about the trade-off between maybe the randomness and the scripted nature of the dialogue? Is there any room for randomness of the dialogue tree?
Oh, absolutely. We tend to write them in stacks with, you know, it's a very small, think of it as a small state machine that just says, okay, this is what's happening. Here's a random list of things I could say to that. And then some of that plays out in ways you don't anticipate. But we look at the things, what are the players doing that we could have the characters respond to that they don't expect? Jumping on tables or stealing stuff or, you know, sneaking in the middle of the night or those kind of things. The more that we can do, the more reactive and interesting the characters appear.
And these state machines, how big are these things? Are these individual to the individual characters? It's just fascinating how you design state machines. Is it just a giant
I would think of
database?
the AI as one big one. Yeah.
Oh, so
For sort of everybody.
so there's an AI.
There's
That's
a
just
manager for all the people.
Yeah.
And one of the
It's a
things
people manager. NPC manager.
right.
Thank you, Todd Howard. Thank you, Lex Friedman, for the excellent content for my stream. I'd like to sub to your channel. Thanks for the excellent content. I like both of you guys.
Nice.
One of the things that makes what we do particularly unique is, and this is a trade-off for what people are seeing, because a lot of it's not on the screen, but we're using cycles to run this, which is we're thinking about everybody in the whole world all the time. The ones that are further away at a much less tick rate, they go into low, but we know if they want to walk across the world, and we're running every quest at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas in other open world games, you start an activity, the rest of the world's going to shut down so that they can really make that as impactful. I really prefer that the rest of it's going on. It's more of a simulation that we're building. So when those things collide, that's where it gets the most interesting. And so we're running all of those people and understanding where they want to go in their cycles and what they want to do. And the ones that are closer to you, we just update a lot more. One way to think about it.
That's really fascinating. It's something that people had, they were wondering about to what degree it's possible to run the world without you. So there is a feeling to role-playing games that you're the center of the world. The whole world rotates around you, as it does in normal life. Like when we walk around, when you forget yourself, you start to take yourself very seriously, like you are the center of the world. You forget that there's 8 billion people on Earth, and you forget they have lives. It's actually a sobering realization that they all have really interesting life stories, and they have their worries, they suffer in different, complicated ways. And yet, when you play a role-playing game, both computationally and from a storytelling perspective, you wonder if the world goes on without you. Like if you come back, if you take a break and you come back, is there still a bustling town that now has a history since you have last visited? So to what degree can you create a world that goes on without you? Or goes on at the same time as you do your thing, whatever the heck you do?
We don't prioritize the stuff you can't see, so it's more like in a movie. You study like the design, or level designers did this, how do they build Disney world places. So it still exists for you, the player. So it is fairly, you know, you're going to come in, this is what you're going to see, the shops are in the front, you're going to do this. It's just for us to make it far more believable and get some more emergent behavior that not just make it sort of the verisimilitude of what you're in for that moment, but you buy it all. I always say, like, you know, we gotta do the little things so that you buy the reality of the virtual world you're in, so we want to do something crazy. You know, when a dragon lands or a death ball comes out of the wasteland or those kind of things that it has the impact to you as the viewer that it would to the people in the world.
Okay. But still, you are simulating stuff that's close to you. It is a bit of a simulation going on.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And so that creates some interesting dynamics then.
And the stuff that we're looking at in the future, you know, our plan is to push that even more. To think about how these things exist in the world first. And we do some of this, but even more so in the future. Say, how do these... things exist. Take like a faction in the world. What is their role in the world, as opposed to just their role is for the player to join it, go through a bunch of quests, and become the head of the faction. You know, think a little bit deeper about the simulation and what would the Mages Guild be doing in a fantasy world, or the Fighters Guild be doing in a fantasy world, versus just sign up, do quests, get gold.
And so that when you show up to that Mages Guild, it's a bustling guild full of stuff going on.
It's not just that it's bustling, it's that they feel rooted in it. They don't feel like a storefront for come here, do quests, get experience.
Is that one of the essential components of randomly generated worlds? So when I think back to Daggerfall, like gigantic world. When I first played it, I thought like, I mean, you're just struck by the immensity of it.
Right.
The immensity of the possibility. When you're young and you look into your future, it's wide open and you can do anything. And that's what Daggerfall felt like. The openness was gigantic.
And Daggerfall is interesting coming off Arena, where Arena does the same thing, but Daggerfall in many ways is bigger, despite focusing on an area, because of how the density of, okay, this is how much physical game space we'll do for these villages and towns, and it does feel endless, even though you're looking at a map that has constraints. And Daggerfall actually was a touchstone for us going into Starfield for how we do the planets, because there's a different kind of gameplay experience when you just wander outside a city in Daggerfall than, you know, follow a quest line and go to this place, and it's completely handcrafted, and everything around every corner we've kind of placed like Skyrim. You know, Starfield's a bit more like Daggerfall, and if you wander outside the city, we're going to be generating things, and you kind of get used to that game flow, different than we've done before, and fun in a different kind of way.
We'll talk about Starfield. So, just for people who don't know, and how dare you for not knowing, but with Daggerfall, we're talking about the Elder Scrolls series that started. So we're talking about the big titles within the series. Started with Arena in '94, Daggerfall in '96. I didn't look up the years before this. This is depressing, or awesome. So all of these games brought hundreds, probably for some of them thousands of hours of joy for me. So Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. So I don't remember Arena being that open world.
Well, it's all the provinces. It follows kind of the same pattern. It just doesn't have all the number of villages and places that Daggerfall has, while Daggerfall focuses on the Iliac Bay area. Arena does it all. It just changes the scale in terms of, you know, one block on the map is this much big.
There is something that, I mean, I'm speaking to anecdotal experience, but I just remember it feeling wide open, Daggerfall.
It definitely was, yeah.
The way Arena did. I don't remember. Maybe because Arena, it was so cool to have the role-playing game aspect. You're focused on the items and the character development.
Daggerfall has a lot more depth, particularly in the character system. That's what it introduces, all of the skills and those kind of things. Arena, it's a game I love. And it's very, very elegant. If you look at the first one, where it's just an XP-based system, do this, get XP, level up. Very classic role-playing game. Daggerfall digs deep into who's your character, how you're going to develop it, what are your skills, there's advantages, there's disadvantages. And the environment going full 3D from Arena, which is actually like a 2.5D Doom-style engine, that I agree with you that Daggerfall feels like there's more possibilities when you're playing it.
Were you able to like look up at the sky in Daggerfall?
Yep.
My memory
full 3D, yeah.
So that's what full 3D means. And then you can go outside the city.
You can walk outside the city. You can do that in Arena too, but it looks more fakey, right? It's all gonna be a flat plane. Here comes things, and then a dungeon entrance is, 8-bit. Here comes a little flat coming at the camera.
Before we go to the end, in the middle, so from Starfield to Fallout and the Elder Scrolls series, let's go to the very beginning. What's the origin story? You know what? We'll go before that. When's the first time you remember the thing that makes
Right now, Sniper Wolf is a lot like the aliens on the Buzz Lightyear ride at Disney World, just getting blasted. Every single corner of the internet is coming together to talk about the Sniper Wolf situation and the doxing against a fellow YouTuber, Jax Films. From the surface to the shadowy underbelly of the internet, everyone is discussing it. YouTubers, Redditors, if Yahoo Answers still existed, there'd be 50 threads about this by now. I mean, it is everywhere. It's remarkable how big it's become. I'll give you the brief nutshell on it in case you don't know what I'm referring to, but I know you do. If you're watching this video right now on the internet, you are at least loosely familiar with who she is and what she just did, because she just broke one of the 10 commandments of being online. She took an internet dispute into the god-forsaken wasteland we call the corporeal dimension, the real world. Wake the fuck up, samurai. Usually internet beef is just served up medium rare online, but she served this beef medium dare you to commit a crime. Man, that shit was lame. But kind of like Dr. Seuss rhyming that one, actually. Kind of fire. But what I'm saying is, what started is just Jax Films making fun of Sniper Wolf for her content and pointing out that what she's doing is bad, escalated into her being so upset about it that she found his address, went to his address, posted it on her Instagram, not the address per se, but just posted his house on her Instagram, bragging about it, saying, it's time we talk it out like adults. Which, of course, is the furthest thing from talking it out, unless, of course, you're an unhinged lunatic. This is just senseless yapping to try and justify what she did here. You can't do that. It's borderline criminal. So she posted it, 5 million of her Instagram followers to see, which of course made Jax Films and his wife feel very unsafe in their home. And since then, she hasn't said anything about it. I think it's only a matter of time before she makes an apology video. It's really just an if instead of, nope. The expression is, it's a matter of when instead of if. I think it's inevitable. The only thing that remains to be seen is where it's going to rank on the YouTuber apology tier list. So that's the only question I have left about that. But this is only the beginning of a really bad week for Sniper Wolf. She's having a worse week than King Kong fans right now with the release of the worst fucking game of the year, Rise of Kong. She also had a lot of people digging through her catalog of content, and they found something very not good, very weird. let's say. I can't show you anything here because I think there is a chance that it's completely against YouTube's terms. It's her encouraging some seemingly underage individuals to do some degenerate acts on video, and the way she encouraged them was almost like a wager you'd see out of a bad Brazzers film. She wagered her tits, saying that if these underage-looking individuals did what she asked them to do, she'd show tits. This was a video back in like 2014. They do it, and then like one of the kids' moms walks in. It's like very fucking odd, awful shit. And this is just another, alarming thing that Sniper Wolf has in the backlog of her lore. As I was rendering this video, people found another seemingly illegal, potentially, piece of content that Sniper Wolf has on her channel. In this video, she's talking to strangers on Omegle, and then she meets this girl who says that she's 16, and then agrees to show each other their boobs, and the 16-year-old flashes the camera, which Sniper Wolf does censor, but that doesn't make it okay. I'm pretty sure that's still illegal. You can't just have an underage person being sexual on video and then just say, hey, wait a minute, Buster, it's fine because it's censored. It's like, what the fuck? And the video is still up right now. And in the whole clip, it's not like there was some like, just kidding, not actually 16, actually in my 20s. There was nothing like that. After that happens, Sniper Wolf just said that, she's fake like her or whatever, and then disconnects. So it really seems like she just had a minor flash the camera on a YouTube video. It's fucking crazy. Now I'm going to go ahead and mention something I've seen a few comments talking about to explain what actually happened in this clip here. And I don't know if this is like the Sniper Wolf Defense Squadron operating under DEFCON protocol, so they're in full force trying to figure out any way of explaining this really awful shit. But I'm going to go ahead and share this anyway, just to be complete with the subject. There's some people saying that that wasn't actually a 16-year-old, it was a bot that was just spamming the chat, and Sniper Wolf was like reacting to it, knowing it was a bot, knowing it wasn't an actual 16-year-old, and that the person, the girl in the video clip, was just a like cam model or something that's supposed to drive people to some kind of cam site. I don't know enough about Omegle to know if that's something that happens, but regardless, this is still an extremely concerning clip. But rest assured, Sniper Wolf fans, there's still one person, rather one entity, still very much on the side of Sniper Wolf, and that's YouTube. This is the update I want to give today. It wasn't so much just going over like where everything's at here. It's YouTube's response to all this, because it is so big, and doxing is, it's borderline criminal, of course. What would YouTube's response be? They have cracked down on that kind of activity very hard in the past. So obviously, most people were expecting some kind of action to be taken. It's just wondering what. So far, they've only made like vague references to it or vaguely talked around it. There hasn't been any kind of statement from them about what they plan to do about this situation, aside from a couple of tidbits that they've talked about that seem to indicate that they're not going to do anything. But I don't think anything's 100% confirmed as like this is the path they're taking. But they have publicly made this tweet in the midst of all this. Would it be too meta to do a reaction video to a reaction video? Which is such a lame fucking ChatGPT generated tweet. That is like the most how do you do fellow kids shit ever. And comes at the worst possible time because Sniper Wolf is a reactor to TikTok content and all that. So clearly this is very poorly timed, unless of course this is their way of like trying to show support for Sniper Wolf, which it very well could be. They have made a lot of tweets about her, all very positive. In fact, this whole situation between Jax Films and Sniper Wolf really started catching fire when YouTube themselves made a tweet saying, "Where does Sniper Wolf get her ideas?" And then they also made another one talking about how, like, Sniper Wolf is our turbo super creator of the year. Unbelievable. So just like these very, very positive, pumping their fist Sniper Wolf fan tweets. This one, of course, got community noted For additional context, it needs to be known that this tweet was written in the wake of a controversy regarding a reaction YouTuber Sniper Wolf who recently leaked the personal information of a fellow creator on the platform, Jax Films, and then it cites one of the many sources. I almost can't help but be impressed and like appreciate how bold this tweet from YouTube is here, though. To just drop this shit would be too meta to react to a reaction video. Like, they know this is going on. Like, they have loosely acknowledged the situation in a couple of tweets. Like, they know this is happening because everyone on the internet knows that this is happening right now. This is the hottest shit there is. This shit is leaving the toilet bowl steaming, it's so hot. They can't be oblivious to it. But whatever ghoul is running this account must be really kept isolated in some kind of sensory deprivation tank, cut off from the rest of the world, and forced to just occasionally drop a bad tweet, because there is just some crazy disconnect here to think that this tweet was a good idea. Because I really don't believe that what they're trying to do with this is, you know, slyly, you know, hey, Sniper Wolf's pretty fucking awesome, right? Like, in the middle of this, I don't think they'd be that dumb. I don't think they'd be that stupid. I really think this is just like a poorly timed bad tweet from them. Of course, I have no evidence to corroborate that theory. It's just me here thumbing my ass, just speculating. It's, at the end of the day, it's just a game theory. I just really don't believe that they would be so bold to just, in the middle of this, give like a big nod to Sniper Wolf. The entire internet is waiting on bated breath to see what they're going to do. Jax Films is calling for like demonetization or like even deplatforming because of the severity of the rule breaking. A lot of other people are rallying behind those things as well. The bare minimum people are looking to see is some kind of punishment issued to Sniper Wolf here in order to, you know, prove to the community that YouTube isn't playing favorites when it comes to their most extreme rules. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request to just want to know, what are you going to do about it, YouTube? Because this is a big deal, and this is something that other creators in the past have gotten big trouble for. So why would Sniper Wolf get a pass on that? And if she does, can you explain why? Right? Like, there have to be a reason for it. I think the obvious reason would be she brings in so much money to the platform, and YouTube loves her so much that they wouldn't ever take action against her even if she went on camera and slit the throat of 5 puppies. But just communicate what you're going to do here. Like, I don't think this is a situation that would take a super long time for them to decide what they're going to do. So I'm kind of under the assumption that they're not going to do anything about it. They might make another more direct acknowledgement of it, but it'll probably just be a more slap on the wrist. But again, I'm just spitballing here based on YouTube's past, because there is favoritism on the platform, as there is on every other platform. YouTube's no exception there, and I think it's pretty clear that she's going to get some kind of special treatment when it comes to this rule breaking, which really sucks. And look, the damage is very much done to Jax Films and his wife. As you mentioned, they don't really feel safe in their home anymore, which is totally understandable. She dumped a picture of their house for all of her 5 million followers to see. And on Instagram, I think the followers there are going to be a degree higher in terms of their support of Sniper Wolf than, like, her YouTube audience. Like, I think those are going to be where the super fans are, and they probably fucking hate Jax Films, and now they have this. It makes sense why he'd feel unsafe. I mean, it's a pretty evil thing to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if she got even more diabolical with it and turned his house into like a Pokemon Go stop or something. Like, really just trying to put their location out there as best she could. And she did make another post that Jax Films also made a tweet about, where she was poking fun at this situation lightly, saying like, we pull up to your house, what would you do? Which is so unbelievably tone deaf that she doesn't understand the severity of what she did. The whole situation is fucked. I just wanted to give a little update here because it's already been like 5 days. So that's where everything's at. I guess we'll continue to wait and see what YouTube will or will not do. And so yeah.
fall in love with video games?
Well, I think it's partly, my age coming up with the arcades and playing Space Invaders at the pizza place and Pac-Man. Really, it's interesting about video games and what Pac-Man did for video games, where it popularized them in a way that was just insane at the time. Had a song, had a cartoon, had all of the things. Nintendo comes along, so it was always part of, I think if you were a kid growing up then, it was such a newness to playing things like that. I remember being in 5th grade when the TRS-80 was brought into the classroom and there was a Star Trek game. And I was enamored with it, and they were going to start teaching some rudimentary programming. Okay, would you like to know how this is made? And I was hooked. So I need to figure out how to make this stuff. And so I was a self-taught programmer, and my whole goal was to write my own video games. And by 6th, 7th grade, I had written my own much better Star Trek film for the Apple II. I really enjoyed programming on the Apple II then. And that, I think, was the right level of complexity, at that age, where you could you were always learning, but you could still understand a lot of the problem set for this is when I get on the screen. And I was also into art. So I did a lot of art, and I did a lot of programming, and I was always making games. That was my hobby from the time I was, 10 or 12.
What was to you involved in making games? How did you think of it? Was it from a graphics perspective, what shows up on screen? Was it how it makes you feel? Was it about the story? Was it the text-based stuff and the dialogue and the prompting? What does it mean to create a video game at that young age to you?
Well, it was a way of experiencing things that I couldn't myself. So, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons at the time too, where you really feel, even pen and paper, these are they feel somewhat, in quotes, real to you as you're playing them. You're very invested in your character and what you're doing. And then I loved the games, the Wizardry and Ultima, that were able to bring that to a computer so I could, do it on my own time. It was very, very real to me. I'd sit in my bedroom and then go to bed and think about it, and then, oh no, I have to go to school. I want to come home and figure out how to do this problem in the game. And so whatever I was creating was something that I was excited about at the time. I made a Raiders of the Lost Ark game.
With graphics and everything?
Yeah, it was usually, made a Miami Vice game, made a Gru the Wanderer game, made a Traveler game. But every time I was doing it, I wanted to figure out a new method on the Apple II of pulling it off graphically. Whether that was editing character sets to get graphics in different formats, or how can I enable the secret double high-res mode it had, or just things like that, where it became kind of this limitless, what can I make this do? And I had some friends who were doing the same thing, and then you get into who can impress each other. And I was kind of middle of the pack, I would say. But again, this was the time where they're bringing computers into the school, and the Apples come into the school, and the teachers are learning it because they have to teach the students. But then I would say I was part of a group of students that were way past that. And it was very much of a self-taught, how do you make this thing dance?
I'd like to ask a strange question. So at that time, a lot of people consider you one of, if not the greatest game designer creator of all time. You were middle of the pack then. Did you have a sense that this would be your life, and you would also be creating, the greatest games ever?
Not in the slightest. No, I don't think anybody. But I was very much that was my dream at that age. But you don't think that that's a job, And as I got older, I was really going through college, even the computer classes then weren't where I wanted them to be, so I was still kind of doing my own stuff. And I ended up getting a business degree and then interviewing for some jobs, finance jobs. So, well, I guess I should do this to make money, and I can keep doing this on the side. And I remember I actually got to like the final level of like this corporate finance job at Circuit City,
Nice.
and they turned me down. And I was like, fuck them. I'm just going to go make video games. So, thank you, Circuit City.
Yeah, I remember Circuit City. I think they went bankrupt actually.
Well, they were based in Richmond. I was going to school close
Yeah.
to there. So,
So what's the origin story of you joining Bethesda Softworks at the time?
so I had gotten Wayne Gretzky Hockey 3 for Christmas from my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. I was in college, and I noticed that it was, in Rockville, Maryland. And, that's on my way home over Christmas break back to William & Mary, where I went to college. And I was at this point committed, like, this is what I want to do. So I'm just going to drive by and knock on the door, which is what I did. So I drove by and knocked on the door. It was Martin Luther King Day, 93. And someone came out and met me and said, well, maybe, and I said, well, I'm in college. I'm talking about when I'm out of school. I'm like, well, okay, well, contact us then. And I will say I would contact them every once in a while. I did work for a small software company right out of school down in that area of Williamsburg, and still would contact Bethesda. Arena had just come out. So then we're in 94. Arena had just come out, and I loved it. So I was into sports games. I like the hockey stuff. They did a basketball game.
Yeah, I'm just looking at. They did like 6 sports games. 6. Bethesda has
Gridiron.
released 10 games.
Yeah.
6 of them sports games. And NCAA basketball, Hockey League Simulator.
So it was really like sports Gridiron, which is like the first kind of physics-based football game at the time. And there's a famous story with Electronic Arts trying to do Madden and then hiring Bethesda before my time to make Madden because they were struggling. When I started at Bethesda, I remember the owner had John Madden's Oakland Raiders playbook in his office. Like, ooh, can I see that? And I love sports, right? So I still play Madden to this day. I love it.
So there's an alternate reality where
I made sports games? Yeah, absolutely.
this
I
just
wanted
blew
to
my
make
mind.
like the ultimate college football game. Well, it's always like, it's like music. You probably listen to lots of type of music. Like, you don't play every type.
But I think of open worlds as fundamentally different.
Well, sure.
No, like source of happiness, entertainment, storytelling, world, gaming than Madden. I mean, it just because I love both. I love both worlds, but
They're two totally different experiences. Just like when you might watch a movie, you might be in the mood for Lord of the Rings one day, and then you want some other, I don't know, competitive show or game show or something like that. Or watch football on TV, right? You watch football on TV, but then I want to get really into Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I think all those things have validity. And actually, one of the first things I worked on when I started at Bethesda was NCAA basketball, Road to the Final Four 2. So that was kind of an external project. Came in like, hey, you know sports, get this game done. And then went on to, but they were doing everything I loved. It was like, this is where I have to work. They're doing like the Terminator science fiction stuff. I love that. They're doing these open world role playing games. Like, I love that. And they're doing sports. Like this, I have to work here. So I started
Arena,
there and
you loved.
I loved it. Yeah. So when I came in, it had just come out and they were doing the CD-ROM version. So CD-ROMs aren't even out yet.
Oh, it used to be floppy disks. That's probably one of. What was Arena
We would burn
released?
them in the basement. We had the disk replicators.
Right. So Arena was not released on floppy.
It
released on
was, yes. I believe it's 6 floppy disks.
6 floppy disks.
Maybe it was 8.
Yeah.
But in those days, the number of floppy disks was very, very important to what the money you were making. So, if you wanted to do a big, huge game, well, that's just too many disks. So the CD-ROM became this jumping off point for the whole industry where, it's unlimited data.
By the way, I played Arena. So that was of course attained um, legally,
Through
as one does,
alternate means.
by alternate means,
Right.
on floppy disks, and that was such an incredible, as you probably have seen, interacted with a large number of people. It's a whole world. It's a world that you escape to in the way like your favorite book, like Lord of the Rings. It was just it was unlike anything else. It was incredible. It's probably, I mean, of course, as people say, it's the first game you play is the most, is the one that really sentimentally means the most to you. That's, I think, the first role-playing game I played, and it was just changed everything.
Was Arena?
It was Arena, yeah. I think Daggerfall is what I really really played, especially because, like you said, the character development was really rich, but just like that you can feel like you travel to this whole other world that's less about entertainment like a shooting game,
Right.
and more about a world. It felt like it's a world, like you're literally there. You can travel there, you can live there, you actually feel like that person, versus like a Pac-Man, like an arcade fun entertaining adventure game. So so you made it. What did you work on first there?
I worked, well, everyone did a bunch of stuff. So I worked on the basketball game, really just to get it out the door. And Terminator Future Shock. So we were doing Future Shock and Daggerfall at the same time. They were developing a new engine. So it was one of the first 3D engines, the X engine. There were a bunch of guys from Denmark, actually. There's like a big Danish demo scene in those days in the PC. And so a bunch of the top programmers there. Well, look, this is not big. This is not a big company. Maybe there's 20 people in development. And we were doing both Daggerfall and the new Terminator. And so Daggerfall was a bit more, again, behind the Terminator game. So I was one of the main people on the Terminator team. And I don't know, things kind of worked out. I very quickly, I don't know why, like I quickly became the producer, and I was making levels and doing all these things, and it was awesome. And I, like, looking back now, I can understand it better. But at the time, I didn't appreciate it, which is no one quite owned the Terminator license. It was in like this limbo legally. So there was no one to tell us what to, like, no, you can't do that. So we would, pick apart the movies and how does he mention the gun he wants and the wattage of the laser and all these things. And so Future Shock is a game that I still love today. It does a lot of things that if you go back and look at it, we're frankly still doing. Like, it's a large, open world, post-apocalyptic, landscape height map with instanced objects all over it. And that is still a lot of how we build our worlds.
What's an instanced object?
It's, some games, every, wall or building is kind of unique in its data, whereas we would just build, these little husks of buildings and then place them all over the place. So the memory and the way you render it is much more optimal.
So that allows you to build a bigger world.
Allows you to build a bigger world much faster, and not, not every single version of that building isn't its own unique architecture that is going to take up memory and processing speed, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're there very much feeling the computational constraints of the system when you're creating these open worlds.
And you know what? That's the thing then. You see some of it now, but in those times, I do feel like every year the technology moved. And maybe it's because, same thing, we're like that my age at that time, where every year somebody was coming up with some new method or some new game system. And it was every year that innovation. And then, 3D acceleration comes along. And then these things come along, and then HD comes along. And it is true that as time goes on, there is visually a diminishing return in terms of what you're able to do on the screen. And there's a ton of work that goes into it now, because just rendering this cup to the perfect shine and material and roughness, and how does the global illumination off this wall, like, it's a ton of work. Yeah. But you can pretty much do what you want now if you want to put the time in. Whereas then, okay, you can't do everything you want. So pick your battles really carefully, and technically you couldn't do what you want, if that makes sense.
How much trade-off is there now in how much effort you put into the realism of the graphics versus the story? And actually, not even how much effort you put in, but is there trade-off in the experience, the feel of the game, in terms of realism and story?
Usually we will start with let the player have as much agency and do as many things as they can as possible. And we will sacrifice some graphic fidelity for that, some speed for that. You know, we could make a game that, you know, traditionally our games are, you know, we okay with 30 frames a second as long as it looks really good and the simulation's running and all of those things. So we'll sacrifice some of that fidelity for the player experience in the kind of things that I do. But from like a manpower standpoint, the graphics programmers work on graphics, the artists work on art, and we have a awesome team of artists and designers and writers and programmers. It's usually where we find, as time goes on, the amount of art time that it takes to create a cup compared to what it used to be, that has increased. So we do use, like most people use, art outsourcing as well, so that we still relatively, compared to our industry and what we're doing, have smaller teams.
What about the experience of the beauty of the graphics? So like one of the most amazing things about Skyrim, and maybe you could say that about some of the other games, but for me, Skyrim is the outdoor. When you step outside,
Yeah.
it's the outdoor scenery. So what does it take to create the feeling, especially of that, being outdoors, of nature, and just like lost in the beauty, whatever it is when you go hiking and you feel the awe of it? How do you create that awe? Is that graphics? What is that?
It's a lot of graphics. It's a lot of mood. We just talk about it in terms of tone. And those are, again, going back to my previous comment, the graphics are very, very important to us because, and we always push them, because when you're doing the kind of things we do where you step into a virtual world, it does have to have that moment of, wow, this feels real. I've never experienced this. And it's okay. I think it's okay to let just like the time settle. Meaning you step out, how does the wind sound? How are the trees moving? How are the clouds moving? I enjoy strolling and watching the sunset. How does it land over the water? Like, it doesn't have to be like, hey, let's go, let's finish a quest, let's go kill things, let's figure out the next step, let's level up. Like, I like the quiet moments a lot, and I think when you play our games, you can tell we spend a lot of time on them. Then you watch, like, the weather roll in. I think that's just part of being that character, being that person in that space.
Yeah, I saw that there's a mod that removes all enemies. I've been meaning to do that, to just do like a live stream where for hours walk around Skyrim, and then answer questions and so on. That just feels that's a completely stress-free environment. It's just you are, just like you said, in this moment in time. It's so incredible. It feels as incredible as going hiking or something like that, but in a totally different place, like Iceland or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
This whole other surreal, ethereal place. It's it's incredible how you kind of create that. So graphics is a part of that, but also letting it, the temporal aspect of that, like the wind, the rustling sound and look and all of that.
The soundscape is really, really important. And the sky, we spend a lot of time on the sky because it's taking up much more of the screen than a lot of people give credit for.
What about the rendering, the openness of it? Like, how do you,
There's a lot of level of detail, streaming work, and nowadays it's getting more common. Like, frankly, the systems are built better for it. Mm-hmm. Hard drive speed is really prioritized. Like, they're so blazing fast. You take Skyrim and Oblivion and the fallouts of that 360 era. It's And it was a lot of time spent on how do we get all this data streaming in as you move, and then levels of detail so you can see all the way, but not, crush the processor.
You know what? Let's even step back, because you mentioned tone. You mentioned tone a lot. What do you mean by tone?
It's all of it together. If you look at, I think you can flip through, let's just take fantasy. You can sort of look at a couple images or things and know, how does Lord of the Rings different from Game of Thrones, that is different than, a Arthurian like Excalibur, or your, Sci-Fi Channel, series of the month kind of thing. And so finding that, what's going to make it kind of unique, and usually I lean on something that is grounded in reality for what it is, and then have lesser kind of fantastical things, at least at the start, and then they kind of build. So even when we do Starfield, it's a science fiction game. There are laser guns and spaceships that fly around and shoot each other and blah, 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 blah. But it's grounded in, you can look at it and say, oh, okay, this is kind of an extension of things as we view them today in space. And we sort of take the same approach with Fallout, where admittedly things can get even a little bit crazier the longer you're developing Fallout content.
So, just to linger on this, so tone starts at, or defining the tone starts at creating a realistic experience. Like you feel like you can walk into this, and this feels like life. Like
What's their
real
technology level, like even for a fantasy world? Like, is magic, how prevalent is it? Or are they making weapons and things and armor? Is it for utility? Is it for decoration? How do they live their lives? Does this feel like a place that you believe that has some grounding in our reality, whether that's historical or near future, or that it's grounded in some semblance of the reality that you and I understand, so that it can feel, it's also making it feel a little bit welcoming. Like, okay, I understand this.
Is that art or science? So like how do you know when it feels welcoming and everything fits and is
I don't
grounded?
know. I mean, I guess it's personal taste. Some people like things that are weirder, that have more fantastical from the get-go. Even a game like Morrowind, where we get into some more fantastical things, it intentionally starts a little more grounded. There's a very classic medieval-looking town that you come into, but you look just beyond it, and there are mushroom trees and giant insects and things like that.
So in Skyrim, when you put a dragon in it, what are your thoughts about dragons and tone? How does that fit into tone?
It's a great question.
It's a ridiculous question, but yeah, I just love
No,
dragons, so I want to bring it up.
No. These are the things that we debate with.
Do we include a dragon? Why didn't you include a dragon in Daggerfall? That's what I want to know.
I think there's dragonlings. They were hard to do. Dragons are hard to do. So when you start Skyrim and say, hey, look, dragons are going to be a theme, just start visually. I think, you can make the argument that dragons existed. Okay, what would they look like? How close to dinosaurs would they be? Or what would they... And ours are less, I believe they're less fantastical looking in general. They look like beasts that could exist in that world. And then how we introduce them, it's kind of a little bit of a slow, roll in Skyrim. And that the people in the world are reacting to